That evening, when she leaned closer and whispered, "I'm glad you came. I'm not joking," my whole world shifted. I didn't even know how to respond. My hands froze around the warm cup of tea. My throat went dry, and for the first time in years, I felt like someone was looking right through me. Not with judgment, but with something that felt dangerously close to hope. My name is Michael Evans. I'm 48, divorced, and I've lived in this quiet neighborhood for nearly a decade. Most evenings are the same. I come home from work, heat up leftovers, sit down with a book or the TV, and tell myself I'm fine with the silence. But the truth is, silence weighs heavier than any workload. It was my neighbor Clara Thompson who broke through it. She's 47, blonde, glasses, always carrying herself with a quiet grace. I used to see her tending the flowers in her yard or carrying groceries in with that calm determination of someone who's learned to survive life's blows. We'd nod, exchange a polite word, and go our separate ways until that night. It started simply. She invited me over for tea. Nothing dramatic, just a neighborly gesture. She said. I almost declined. I'd had a long day and the thought of conversation felt like work. But something in her smile told me not to refuse. So I found myself on her porch, spring air drifting through, the faint smell of jasmine and fresh grass around us. On the table between us, tea, cookies, and the soft glow of a lamp fighting the evening shadows. We talked about little things at first. The weather, work, the constant repairs older houses demand. But then her eyes lingered longer. Her tone softened and she leaned in. That was when she whispered those words. I'm glad you came. I'm not joking. They hit me harder than I expected. You see, after my divorce, I built walls so high even I couldn't see over them. My ex-wife had left for someone else, younger, more ambitious, maybe just less tired. It tore a hole in me that I tried to patch with routines and excuses. I convinced myself that love was a closed chapter, that I was too old to start over, too scarred to try. And yet, here was Clara Thompson, her voice breaking through that silence I had been carrying for years. Her smile after those words wasn't playful. It wasn't even particularly bold. It was steady, as if she had been holding something inside for far too long, and finally let it slip. I stared at her, caught between the urge to ask what she truly meant and the fear of what her answer might be. We kept talking, but now everything felt charged. She asked about my past, and I surprised myself by answering honestly. I told her about the nights I'd eaten alone at the kitchen table, about missing the sound of someone laughing at my bad jokes. She didn't pity me. She just listened, her eyes soft, her hands warming the cup as if she was holding on to my words as much as the tea. Then she shared her own story. A widow for 5 years. Her husband had died in a car accident, and she admitted she had carried guilt ever since. She had stopped inviting people over, stopped opening herself to anyone new. Until now, she said quietly. That moment something shifted between us. The tea cooled, the cookies sat untouched, but neither of us cared. It wasn't about what was on the table. It was about what hung in the air between us. I saw the loneliness she carried, and she saw mine. Two people who had spent years pretending they were fine, suddenly stripped bare by a single whisper. When I finally stood to leave, I hesitated at the door. She didn't ask me to stay, but her eyes lingered on me in a way that made it clear she wouldn't have minded. I stepped out into the cool night, the scent of her jasmine flowers clinging to my jacket. Walking home, her words echoed in my head. I'm glad you came. I'm not joking. For the first time in years, the silence in my house didn't feel crushing. Felt full of possibility. That night, I didn't sleep well. Clara Thompson's words kept replaying in my mind, circling like a song I couldn't turn off. I'm glad you came. I'm not joking. They weren't the kind of words you just forget. They carried weight, history, maybe even a warning. By morning, I knew one thing. I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. The following evening, she invited me again, this time for dinner. I hesitated, worried it might look like too much too soon. But when I stepped onto her porch and saw the light spilling from her kitchen window, I realized I wanted to be there. She had set the table with care. A simple meal, 2 glasses of wine, candles flickering like she'd taken the trouble to create not just a dinner, but a space where walls might come down. We ate slowly, more talking than chewing. She asked me about my past. Really asked, not with politeness, but with genuine interest. I found myself telling her about the long evenings after work when I would sit in my car for 10 extra minutes just so I wouldn't walk into an empty house too quickly. About the birthdays I stopped celebrating because there was no one left to buy a cake. She listened, not once interrupting, her gaze steady. Then she spoke. My husband died 5 years ago. Car accident. They said it wasn't anyone's fault, but I still play it back in my head. What if I had told him not to go that day? What if I'd stopped him somehow? Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. Since then, I've been afraid to let anyone sit across this table. Until now, I didn't know what to say. The weight of her confession pressed on me. But silence didn't feel right either. So I told her the truth. I know what it's like to feel like life passed you by, to think it's safer to stay alone. But it's not living. It's just surviving. Her eyes shimmered in the candle light, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she smiled faintly. You understand more than most. After dinner, we moved to the porch. The night was soft, a breeze stirring the trees, carrying the smell of spring rain. We sat side by side, cups of tea warming our hands. She seemed lighter somehow, as if speaking her truth had taken some of the weight off her shoulders. But the world around us wasn't blind. A couple of neighbors walked by, giving us quick glances, not hostile, but curious, the way people in small neighborhoods always are. I felt heat rise in my chest, the instinct to explain myself, even though there was nothing wrong. Clara Thompson caught it. They'll talk, she said calmly. They always do. Her acceptance struck me harder than their stares. She had lived with whispers, endured the weight of gossip, and she wasn't afraid anymore. But I was, after my divorce, even the smallest judgment cut deep. Sitting there, I wondered if I had the courage to face it with her. She must have sensed my unease because she leaned slightly closer and said, "You're not here for them. You're here for you." Her words hit me like a challenge, as though she was asking me to choose whether I would hide behind old fears or step into something new. I didn't answer right away. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted the cup. The silence stretched thick and alive. And yet in that silence, there was a strange comfort, like we had both admitted too much to ever go back. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. For a second, she hesitated, her hand hovering near mine, not quite touching. Her eyes caught mine with a quiet intensity that left no room for doubt. "I'm not joking," she repeated softly, echoing the night before. I left her porch with my heart beating faster than it had in years. The streets were quiet, the houses dark, but inside me something was awake, restless, impossible to ignore. The loneliness I had worn, like a second skin, suddenly felt thinner, weaker, as though it could finally be shed. That night, lying in bed, I knew the truth. This wasn't just two neighbors sharing tea and dinner. It was something fragile, something dangerous, and something I couldn't turn away from anymore. It was the following weekend when the first shadow appeared in what had felt like a fragile beginning. I was outside fixing a loose hinge on my porch door when I saw Clara Thompson across the street, speaking with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confidence that comes from believing the world owes you attention. His hand lingered too close on her arm, his stance too familiar. I tried to look away, pretend it wasn't my business, but something inside me tightened. Clara Thompson's posture was polite yet guarded. She smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile she had given me the night before. This one was rehearsed, cautious. After a few minutes, he left, climbing into a sleek black car. Only then did she notice me watching. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw the faintest flicker of apology. Later that day, she called. "That was James," she explained. "My late husband's friend. He checks in sometimes, though, and not always for the right reasons." I didn't press, but I didn't need to. The way she said it, I knew James's visits carried weight. Unwanted weight. The kind that reminded her of loss, of what people thought she should or shouldn't do with her life. That evening, I stopped by her house. She was on the porch, tea already waiting. He doesn't like seeing me with anyone, she admitted, her voice low, as if I owe my grief to him, to everyone who knew us. As if moving on is a betrayal. Her honesty pierced me. I set my cup down and said, "You don't owe him or anyone your loneliness." The words came out sharper than I meant, but she didn't flinch. She just looked at me, eyes wide, as if weighing whether I truly believed it. The night stretched quiet. The usual calm of our conversations felt heavier, filled with unspoken fears. I kept wondering what James had said to her, whether he had warned her, judged her, or tried to guilt her back into silence. When I finally left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a storm. The next morning, I ran into James myself. He was leaning against his car, waiting by the sidewalk as if he had planned the encounter. "You're spending a lot of time with her," he said flatly, his tone laced with disdain. "She's my neighbor," I replied carefully. He smirked. "She's vulnerable. She doesn't need someone like you complicating things." His words stung more than I wanted to admit. Someone like me, divorced, ordinary, carrying my own baggage. I didn't respond. I walked away, but his voice followed me. "She'll realize soon enough." That night, when I sat with Clara Thompson again, I debated whether to tell her. But when I saw her, framed by the warm glow of her kitchen light, I couldn't. Instead, I asked about her day, listened as she laughed about small frustrations, the broken washing machine, the stubborn garden weeds, and for a moment, the world outside didn't matter. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going away. James wasn't just a man from her past. He was the voice of every judgment we both feared. Every whisper from the neighbors, every doubt that told us happiness at our age, in our situation, wasn't meant to be. As I walked home, the air heavy with the scent of blooming lilacs, I realized the real conflict had begun. It wasn't just between me and James. It was between the life I had convinced myself I deserved and the life that was suddenly possible with Clara Thompson, if we were brave enough to claim it. The tension that had been building finally broke one late afternoon. I was at Clara Thompson's, helping her carry a box of old books from the garage into the house. We were laughing about how neither of us had the strength we once did when James's car pulled into her driveway without warning. The engine cut off sharply, and the silence that followed was heavier than any box we could have lifted. He stepped out, crisp suit, polished shoes, like he had come straight from a world that didn't belong in ours. "Clara Thompson," he said, ignoring me completely. "We need to talk." She froze for a moment before answering. "James, this isn't the time," but he wasn't listening. His eyes flicked to me, narrowing. "So this is what it is now. You've replaced him with." He stopped, letting the insult hang in the air. I clenched my jaw, but stayed silent. This wasn't about me. It was about her. Still, his words dug deep. Clara Thompson's face flushed. "That's enough. You don't get to walk in here and pass judgment on my life." James's expression shifted from anger to something sharper, colder. "Everyone is talking, Clara Thompson. You think I'm the only one? They think you've lost your mind. Clinging to this." His gesture toward me was dismissive, cruel. Something inside me snapped. "You don't speak for her, and you sure as hell don't speak for me." My voice came out steadier than I felt. But the moment the words left my mouth, I wondered if I had crossed a line. James took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "Stay out of this. You don't know her like I do. You don't know what she needs." Before I could respond, Clara Thompson's voice cut through, firm and unshaken. "Enough, James. You're not my protector. You were my husband's friend, and I respected that once. But this," she motioned between the three of us, "this is not your place." The silence that followed was brutal. James looked at her, then at me, his jaw tight. For a moment, I thought he might lash out, but instead he turned sharply and walked back to his car. The slam of the door echoed down the street, and then he was gone. I stood there, my chest tight, unsure what to say. Clara Thompson sank into a chair on the porch, her hands trembling slightly. I sat beside her, waiting. Finally, she whispered, "I hate that he still makes me feel guilty, like I owe my grief to him, like moving forward means betraying the past. I reached for her hand without thinking. You don't owe him anything. You don't owe anyone anything. Her eyes lifted to mine, and in them I saw the years of loneliness, the quiet strength it had taken to keep going, and the fear of being judged for wanting something more. Do you believe that? She asked softly. I do, I said, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't just trying to convince her. I was convincing myself. The sun dipped lower, painting the porch in shades of gold and shadow. We sat there, hands still joined, neither of us moving. It wasn't a victory, not yet. James's presence still lingered, like a storm cloud threatening to return. But for the first time, we had faced him together. When I walked home later, the air felt different, lighter, but charged. I knew things weren't resolved. If anything, they had only grown more complicated. But I also knew this. Whatever came next, neither of us wanted to face it alone anymore. The storm came on a Thursday night. I remember because I had planned to spend the evening quietly, fixing a loose shelf and maybe catching up on sleep. But the sky opened up with thunder that rattled the windows. And just as I was considering making tea, there was a knock at my door. Clara Thompson stood there, her hair damp from the rain, her eyes wide, not from the storm, but from something inside her. She stepped in without waiting for an invitation, her hands trembling slightly as she wrapped her cardigan tighter. James came by again, she said, her voice unsteady. He didn't yell this time. He just looked at me as if I was betraying everyone by even existing outside of grief. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to rage, to chase him down, to put an end to his shadow hanging over her life. But instead, I led her to the couch and sat beside her. The rain drummed heavy on the roof, filling the silence between us. I don't know how to stop carrying it, she admitted, her voice breaking. The guilt, the eyes of the neighborhood, the whispers. Part of me thinks maybe he's right. Maybe I am foolish for wanting this. She gestured faintly toward me as if the word itself was too heavy to speak. I leaned forward, my hands clasped. Clara Thompson, if it feels real to you, then it isn't foolish. I'm no perfect man. God knows I've made mistakes. But when I sit with you, when I see you smile, for the first time in years, I believe in something again. If that's foolish, then I'll take it. Her eyes searched mine, and for a long moment, the only sound was the storm pressing against the house. Then, quietly, she whispered, "You make me feel alive again, and that scares me." I reached out, not to pull her closer, but to let her know she wasn't alone. My hand rested over hers, steady, waiting. "I'm scared too," I confessed, "but maybe we don't need to run from that fear. Maybe it means we found something worth holding on to." The thunder cracked again, but it no longer felt threatening. Instead, it felt like the world marking the moment. She exhaled, slow and deliberate, and then rested her head on my shoulder. The weight of it was simple human grounding. We sat there, two people who had lost, who had carried burdens heavier than they could name, finding in each other a chance to set them down. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. James's anger, the neighbors' stares, our own doubts. But for the first time, it didn't matter. When the storm began to fade, she lifted her head and looked at me with a quiet strength I hadn't seen before. "I'm tired of living for everyone else's approval," she said softly. "From now on, I want to choose for myself, and tonight I choose this." Her hand tightened around mine. No hesitation, no apology. I didn't respond with grand promises or dramatic gestures. I simply held her hand back, letting the silence say what words couldn't. Because in that moment, the truth was enough. We had faced the storm and we weren't alone anymore.